the oldest item of jewellery associated with the child that we have found so far to date. This is a 74,000-year-old seashell bead. It's described as having perforations produced by humans. I'm not exactly sure what that means. Does that just mean that it has one hole drilled through it, as you can see in the image? Or is that also talking about that they found evidence of a pattern of holes and that it had signs of wear and tear which coincide with it being worn as an ornament? They are able to prove that shells like these were worn, and certainly we know from other finds throughout history of prehistoric times that prehistoric peoples wore shell beads as jewellery, but they did also sew them onto clothing. It's also documented that there were traces of a red residue found on the bead. Now, this doesn't necessarily tell us that the bead was coloured. The evidence with this find states that the red residue possibly came from the child itself, who was buried painted in red ochre. A tourist video of the Border Cave archaeology site also specifically says that the shell found with this infant was adorned on the infant. That does lead me to believe that the piece was worn, and if this image is correct, was worn around the neck on a string of some description, which has since perished. Now, what's also interesting about this find is that it tells us about prehistoric society and what they thought about children, which goes against a lot of the very early theories that were written, which basically believe that children weren't necessarily thought very highly of. But to date, the grave finds that I have found during prehistoric times of children, whether or not they were wearing jewellery, show that great care and detail was placed around how the child was buried. If we didn't care about children in prehistoric society, we wouldn't have gone to the trouble of arranging their bodies, decorating their bodies, thinking about the placement of their bodies in the grave themselves. And that's what these graves show, specifically this one, that shows that great care and attention was given to this child in its burial. It was only a 4 to 6 month old infant, which means that it was a baby who didn't survive very long. And I'm sure, like every other parent in the world today, that this would have been a highly devastating time and that they loved this child. Why do you think this piece of personal adornment was given to this baby in burial? Let's discuss.